Did you guys watch any of the live election coverage on Tuesday?
I did not watch any of the live election coverage on Tuesday.
Nor did I.
Really? Not even a second?
No, not even a
Um,
Fascinating.
second.
I think I logged in. I think to some of the news outlets just for a glimpse of where things were at. But by that point, it was pretty well already decided, or at
Yeah,
Yeah.
least
I
be on
kind
its
of
way to being decided.
did the same thing. I kept checking in to see what was happening, but I didn't watch anything live. No.
So I was on. I was on from 6:30 p.m. Eastern until 3 a.m. Eastern,
Holy,
and well,
that's an addiction.
I live for this stuff, right? Because I find it totally fascinating, and it reminds me of like,
No, I'm going with addiction.
well, but it only happens every 4 years,
Like the
so
Olympics.
sort of. Yeah. Well, it's more exciting than the Olympics because it's totally random. Like when you look at some of the sites that were, say, Biden did great in 2020. Harris was blown out in these places, and you wonder, what are the outliers? And like we were talking earlier, Mark, about women. Is it just that? I don't think so. You look at the you look at the metrics amongst young men specifically. When I say young men, let's say 18 to 30. So no longer our demographic, but a lot of these people, they on the exit polls, they were coming out, and some of the interviews I saw were saying that Democrats have spent the last 5 or 6 years saying everything that they're doing is toxic and bad, and traditional male roles are now sort of up in the air. And a lot of Democrats think that that's crap, but obviously it had an impact. And they were saying about how the trend,
Yeah,
like
I could see how some people could associate Kamala Harris with woke, which
oh
is
yeah,
which is a bad word in the mouths of a lot of people now, because folks are sick of it. So it's easy to see how that connection could be made, and that in itself might have been enough. I don't know. Um,
I think that's probably. I mean, if you look at the number, the top five things at least that I saw that people were voting on, the first one is the economy. Obviously, it always is, like jobs and whatnot. But the second, like in the United States, they don't really have health care very high because it's not like here where it's free and we care about it. But it was immigration was a huge driver, and then they had sort of like social policies, so DEI stuff. Very low on the ranking was overseas, like Gaza stuff. But other things were just like jobs and whatnot. And you look at how they turned the Democrats, they focused so much in the last 6 years, like 2 years, the 4 years of Biden and the 2 years of that last 2 years of Trump, into like this big DEI push. And it was just basically to combat Trump. Like I like to consider politics as a pendulum. In 2016, when Trump was elected, the pendulum swung way to the right, and then it started to come back to the left. Now it's going to go crazy right again. And I don't want to see any of these groups, with physically violent or anything like that. But there has to be a middle ground, and that's I think where the Democrats have to go in order to get any votes back in 2 years for the midterms. But like I was saying to you, Mark, you can't call Trump supporters rednecks anymore because he won black men, Latinos, suburban women went for him really hard. Muslim voters, Indian voters, even Native voters were going for Trump.
Did
And
he win them, or was he just the only alternative?
I think that has a lot to do with it more than anything.
I
I
don't,
think it was just
I
that
still,
people
I
didn't
don't know.
want to vote for
you're
the other.
you're never going to be able to convince me that it's not all bought and paid for.
In the past, though, those a lot of those groups would simply abstain from voting. Like a lot of natives don't vote, from at least the stats that I read, because of they just see it as like a colonization thing. You've read those, but a lot of natives came out to vote for Trump specifically. They could have just abstained, but they wanted to make a statement, right? And a lot of um, the Latinos, like for the last 2 years, the Republicans have saying that they've been winning among Latinos, and the Democrats keep saying, "Oh, you're crazy, you're crazy." Though that's our group traditionally, they got smoked out by Latinos. the Democrats. So they lost those votes horrendously. And I think I don't think it was just because the two party system. Because as I say, people you could just abstain. Like there were 10 million votes that just disappeared between 2020 and now, and those are just like older people dying, people just not voting. But I think people wanted to make a statement that they didn't like the policies. Sort of like what I think might happen here next year with Polyev and Trudeau. I think a lot of people are just going to say we don't like Trudeau for whatever reason if he's still running. If Trudeau isn't running, it could be very different.
That's the problem now because everybody's too afraid to appear as if they are even in the slightest in agreement with the other party. You know,
What do you
it's
mean?
well because it's there's no centrist anymore, right?
No, you're either right or you're wrong. One or
Well,
the other.
with the federal job cuts that they're talking about, and Trudeau's really reducing the immigration targets, and they're really dialing back a lot of this sort of inclusivity rhetoric. They're
Yeah, they
the,
kind
the,
of went 180 on the immigration policies.
and I think they're moving to the center because they know that they want to court
It's
votes like me who
too little, too late, though.
I don't know. A year is an eternity in politics, right? Anything can happen. I mean,
Yeah, but
Trudeau
he's got
could,
almost a decade of
yeah,
pissing people off.
pissing people off a little bit, but you have to remember that in our electorate, so like Poilievre's polling really highly now amongst voters, but he's still only breaking like 40%. And so the Liberals and the NDP at 25, 26 points collectively, that's a much more people want to vote for either the NDP or the Liberals as opposed to the Conservatives. So if they were to go out this year and say we're going to merge, Conservatives would have no chance, and that's just because there are enough people who are loyal to both parties to, if they were to merge, like let's say if Polyev wins a minority government and the Liberals are the opposition and the NDP are sort of like the balance of power, Polyev won't get anything done. Whereas in the states, it's this two party system where, which I don't like, but have you guys heard anything about what Trump wants to do with Elon Musk?
I heard a little bit, yeah.
So the department that Elon Musk wants to run, and of course you never know with these guys if they're actually being honest, but it's called the Department of Government Efficiencies, or Doge, because Musk loves Dogecoin. I shit you
Mm.
not. So my Doge, like I have I don't know, $70 in Dogecoin. It soared this week after the election because people thought that Musk was going to come in and make this some sort of like national currency type thing. So I made a bit of money on my Dogecoin considering I've been losing on it for the past 2 years. But he wants to cut, I think it was 2 trillion from the federal budget, and so that means massive job cuts in the states, but also like a lot of social programs cut. And the average Republican voter who needs those in 2 years is going to be really upset. So it could be very interesting. But I think it's going to be and this sort of goes into the next thing, which was the celebrity endorsements. Would you guys ever be convinced by a celebrity to vote a certain way?
No, they are the least qualified and overhyped individual for that particular arena. They do not live in reality.
No.
Have no idea what affects normal people. So politicians don't either, to a degree. So no, why
Yeah,
would you listen to them? Just because they're popular?
I think a lot of people like the Taylor Swift sort of sycophants and the Beyonce sycophants who, they hang on their every word. They would like after Taylor
Yeah.
Swift endorsed Harris, there was this phenomenon of people registering to vote. But just because you're registered to vote doesn't mean anything. It's like me saying that I'm going to go and get my license renewed on Friday and I forget.
Well, that's why Harris wheeled out Oprah Winfrey, and, right? Just to try to drum up votes. But no, I would not.
What about you, Mark?
What about me?
Would a celebrity would a celebrity endorsement, like let's say James Hetfield went out you tomorrow and said that he endorsed Donald Trump, would that change your view of that person, or would you think oh maybe they have something?
I'm going to say no, um, because in the last few years, I've been trying to remind myself that it's more important to pay attention to what people do and not what people say. And that goes for just about all walks of life. Um, Especially in this day and age with social media being what it is, it's just one big giant lie, uh, effectively. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and if it isn't, everybody treats it as such because so much of it is. And humans are no different. Um, so I don't believe that a celebrity is going to impact my decision on certain types of things. Um, if it was say I was musically inclined and a musician that I followed or enjoyed the music of recommended a particular instrument, guitar, drum set, whatever, then maybe yes. But that's a different scenario than what you're talking about. I believe, anyway.
How do you know they're sincere? Most of
Well, you
these
have to
people,
assume that they're not.
no,
I
most of
would
Because
assume,
these people make their living pretending that they're somebody else.
right. So you assume that they're not sincere. And you also assume that they're getting something out of it, which they almost certainly are, whether it's monetary or what have you. Um, which is why I say you pay attention to what people do, not what people say.
that's interesting. Yeah, because the what this election cycle really showed us, excuse me, in the states was so Harris trounced out. Like I don't know if Taylor Swift appeared in person, but I know that she went on social media and endorsed. Beyonce endorsed. Oprah Winfrey endorsed, and a variety of other like George Clooney type people. So what this really showed though is that that doesn't mean shit anymore. And
No,
like the Obamas coming out and endorsing Harris, obviously, and like they campaigned hard for her. Obviously, that didn't do anything. Like it didn't increase the voter count. So and like I've always thought that like say guys like Neil deGrasse Tyson, scientists, or like Brian Cox or something like that, if they were to come out and say that you know I endorse Harris because of her scientific policies, that would mean something to me on a I don't know like a macro level that okay, like this person legitimately thinks that this is going to happen. They have no obvious vested interest because they're not religious. They're not really a celebrity per se. They're just like an academic who thinks that they might do better.
no, they're getting paid just like the rest of them with clicks and likes.
A little bit, yeah, but like a person like Beyonce, for example, to come out to endorse, I don't think she's being paid, but I would say that she's probably getting something out of it. Like there's like the whole P Diddy stuff, and the rumor is that that Beyonce's husband Jay-Z and her are going to be implicated, so maybe they wanted a pardon. That could be interesting. But I
That
don't
could
know
be very
what.
good.
I guess what the academics would hope just for more scientific investment, and which I'd be fine with. Like if an academic comes out to endorse and that means there's more science, I'm all for it. But Elon Musk, the only potential good thing I can see from a Trump administration is that Elon Musk and SpaceX might be given like carte blanche to head to Mars, and I want to see that before I die.
I don't
But
know.
it just could be interesting.
I think Elon Musk is the last person that the public should be trusting.
Oh,
You
I
think?
agree. Yeah, I definitely don't think that he's any kind of authority on what because he's anti-labor, he's anti-union, he's anti-wage increases. So he's not anything Musk does is not really in the public interest. But if he can get some stuff put through, like let's say he gets something with huge investments in new battery technology for cars, and then within the next 5 years we have these batteries that will run for 50,000 kilometers on a single charge. That'd be something good for humanity.
You won't see that.
He's been talking about it. He's been talking
Yeah,
about
because it's not going to generate revenue.
But Musk
Well,
is one of these guys.
they wouldn't go that far. They would go incremental steps to make it more expensive for all of the rest of us, so
But
we can keep feeding the machine.
what's a better plan though for Musk? Doing that or setting up a system where Tesla has or SpaceX or whatever company he wants to do has the exclusive rights on all the charging stations across the US where people are paying to charge their cars.
But if you're only charging it once, like your example, every 50,000 miles, as
But
opposed to every 200 to 300 miles, you're not going to be charging as much.
but
So
what if
I
you had to
understand
charge?
your premise, but do you understand mine? He's
Oh,
not going to
definitely,
make as
definitely.
much revenue, and that's all he's in it for is money. It's
But
all
what if he
cash. It's
but
power.
what if he's the one selling the cars that have a proprietary charging mechanism to only be charged at Tesla stations? And let's say, for example, it's like imagine let's say your car's fully electric. Would you pay $2,000 a year to charge it once?
I would
Because right
have
now,
to if that's the
yeah,
only option I have.
and right now, like let's say I go to Esso for gas one day, I go to Petro Canada for another, I go to Canadian Tire. Those are several different companies who are seeing small bits of my revenue. But if one oil company owned everything, then
You
everybody would
don't
have to
think
use
these
theirs.
guys have a share in all of those companies? So they're
Some
seeing it regardless of where you stop.
it depends. So like Shell, for example, like if you stop at a Shell station, it's prudent to assume that the gas they're getting are from Shell-based refineries and Shell-based drilling companies. But if you get from
Yes,
Esso,
but what I'm saying is somebody like Elon will have his fingers in everything.
yeah, one thing that he doesn't seem to be in is oil
Whether it's
companies.
through him or some subsidiary company that he has.
Oh, for sure. But he will only be able to be in power for a maximum, like unless the United States turns into a monarchy. Musk will only be there for 4 years, so he only has 4 years to make some of these changes. And if he fucks it up, the public will never trust him again. So I think he's going to use some of this to enhance those advancements that he's going to rely on for his company when
Oh,
he gets out
without
of
a doubt he
office.
will.
Yeah, and that's what I think. I think it's going to be. I think those some of those changes could end up being a net positive down the road,
Oh,
as as opposed
probably. Yeah.
as opposed to now when you've got just people like Nancy Pelosi doing insider trading and only benefiting. Like no one benefits other than her. But a guy like Musk would probably set up a thing where you know American made solar powered or solar charging shingles for houses because those do exist. But imagine making that in the United States and making it affordable. It'd be interesting. But Mark will never buy an electric car, so
Well, where is all these Teslas that he makes? All the ones that are discontinued or offline. Why is he not recapturing all of their energy?
oh, I would agree, and I
You
think
could power a ton of stuff with just residual energy from batteries that
yeah,
right now is wasted or just sits and slowly bleeds off.
I think that's coming. So one of the things that I was seeing in the I don't know to what extent I'll say give that caveat, but after the last hurricane, there were people in the states who charged their Teslas before the hurricane hit. The hurricane hits, they lose power. They were plugging their Teslas into something, and they were able to power parts of their house with the residual charge from the Tesla.
Yeah, you can draw from it. Yeah.
Yeah, so stuff like that, I think is interesting, and I think once the general public figures that out, it could be. I don't know. I'm very optimistic at how within our lifetime, the next 20 or 30 years, I think that there'll be enough advancements in that field, and I guess my point is that he could do that now. He could do some very serious advancements, which would be very interesting.
There are lots of things they could do now, but it's not monetarily beneficial.
But the problem that I have with it is the statement that when people say something like he might do that now, like you just said.
Hmm.
Because let's face it, he's an idea guy. He's
Yes,
not
yes.
he is smart, don't get me wrong, but a lot of that stems from his ideas, his imagination, and then
Oh,
of
of course.
course his pocketbook that could force those into the front.
Yeah.
ultimately, it's his team of people and all of his engineers, scientists, whoever else he's got working for him. They're the ones that are making it happen. Let's
Oh yeah.
face it.
Well,
He's the pocketbook,
oh yeah, for
basically.
sure. I guess my point is when I say he in this case, it's that he's going to be the one. If anyone can convince Trump to make advancements in battery technology, solar power, and whatnot, it's going to be Elon Musk. And so I guess that's what I mean by he is that he'll be able to take credit for those policies if that happens. And by getting giving SpaceX more contracts, it'll be him who's behind all that. Like sure, the sort of like with Apple, right, with Steve Jobs. I mean, not saying Steve Jobs was not a brilliant man in his own way, but he didn't fucking build the iPods. He just drew a picture of what he wanted and told them what he wanted, and somebody built it.
And that's going to be the interesting thing is when him and Elon and Trump butt heads. It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
I think he would have a lot harder time. Trump. I think Trump would have a lot harder time getting rid of Elon Musk. Like,
Oh, I
let's say
agree.
just because of his influence and his cash, he's not some guy who is a millionaire. Like this guy's either the richest man in the world or one of at this point. But it would be very difficult, especially when you base so much of your campaign around one person. And the same with Robert Kennedy, shifting gears slightly. I don't know if you've seen any of that, what he wants to do, or at least what he claims Trump has promised him, like getting rid of all fluoride in drinking water, heavy vaccine reviews, that sort of thing. And that's another thing. Like if that's successful, and by successful I mean if it actually happens, then Robert Kennedy will have that hanging around his head. But like you have in major cities where fluoride is added to water, I think the figure I saw was that something like between 25 and 30% of people in those cities can't afford to ever see the dentist. So the only fluoride they're getting for their teeth is in the drinking water, which is why they do it in the first place. So you
See,
remove that, that could be problematic.
that's I want. That's why I think Trump was elected. He'll keep us entertained, and all the people that actually run it and pull the strings will get to do whatever they want.
Well,
Oh,
yeah,
but
Because it's
that's
it's not
with any
Trump.
president.
Trump's not nearly smart enough to do anything. Yes,
But
but Trump is dumber than a lot of the other presidents, right? Like he's not. He's just a narcissist. It's
but I think
it's
I
me,
to,
me, me. I'm amazing. Look at what I can do.
I totally agree for his first term. Now he or at least the people he really trusts who were never in government before, now they know how the game is played. So
Well,
I think that
they know how to handle them
yeah,
better now. So it'll be an
now I
interesting go
think
around.
now I think yeah, like you say, I think there'll be a little bit of more policy focused as opposed to insanity. But what my recommendation for the media for all of this to make him less relevant, don't report on fucking anything he does other than government policy.
Won't
Don't
matter.
talk.
exactly.
Don't.
He's got Elon Musk and he's got X.
But a lot of Twitter lost a lot of people when Musk took over. And like if you go on Twitter now, it's there's still a lot of people posting for their particular followings, but it's not the same echo chamber that it was 2 or 3 years ago before he bought
You
it.
take a look at how many people are on X today, and compare that to when he takes office. And I guarantee you, it'll skyrocket.
But I don't think it's. I think it'll be.
Let's
I,
find
I
out
think
how
it.
many they have.
I think it'll be media. I'm not sure if it'll be John Q. Public. Like, are either of you going to join Twitter and follow Elon Musk?
No, never.
No,
Exactly. Because and
But I'm
why?
not.
Because
I'm. It doesn't. I'm not in the Democrat. Well, I don't give a shit anyway,
oh,
either
I know.
here or in the states, to
But
follow anybody on X or
but
Twitter.
is that slightly though because if he does post something crazy, you're going to find out about it from either the media or somebody else.
So, as of April 2024, there are approximately 611 million active monthly users on X.
Yeah.
So let's see if that jumps in a couple of months.
Okay. So so the highest it's ever been with active users was in 2022 with 368 million. And then in 2024 now they have this is just total accounts. So it fell 30 million people between 2022 and 2024.
How many did they have? Well, 30 million is
So
nothing.
It's nothing, but it's a sizable enough chunk to for advertising, and Twitter exists from advertising. It's just like
okay,
Facebook.
okay, but here's the thing, right? Of that original number that you say was at its peak, right, of active users, how many of those were bots and
That's
not
what,
Exactly.
an
yeah.
individual, right? So, and then when you have the fall off of all those accounts or users that dropped out, you can guarantee those were active human users, meaning all those bots are still there.
I think a lot of the I partially agree, probably 50%. A lot of the bots were cleared out when Musk came in because he looked at who was advertising, and whoever didn't agree with him, like he went to war with Disney over advertising, where he told Disney to, cancel all your accounts. I don't want your accounts. Get rid of them. Get rid of all your advertising. Keep it. We don't need it. So a lot of bots fled at that time, like just bots that were only designed just to like regurgitate shit. So
Well,
here's
that's
some,
what most of them do anyway.
yeah, like here's some other statistics. 60.9% of Twitter users are men. 39% are women. Right. So women. I wonder who I would wager a lot of those women on Twitter are influencers, political figures, news media. I don't think the average woman cares about Twitter. Just from what I never hear any women talk about Twitter. Usually, it's always Instagram. 36% of the Twitter audience is between 25 and 34. The highest amount of Twitter users are in the United States. Um, so Twitter registered a revenue of 505 million the first part of the year and 3.4 billion last year total. So they might be down a little bit. Um, so the United States alone accounted for 1.75 billion in the total revenue, whereas the rest of the world was 1.65 billion. And so since that revenue comes from ads, it's mostly American companies that are selling shit to people and posting. And so that's why I don't think it's going to go up that much because I think the Americans who want to be on Twitter at this point to hear Musk are already there.
I don't
I'm
know.
talking about
I
here in Trump.
Pardon me?
I could
I'm
see
talking
a
about here in
crash.
Trump.
Yeah, I just think that if you're a Trump person who wants to see Trump tweets, you're already on the system, right? And because Trump has his own company, don't forget, called Truth Social, which is like a Twitter ripoff. And oh yeah, so Trump also posts on that, and so that's why I think that I don't think Twitter users are going to go. It'll go up slightly because people are going to there'll be news agencies that want to know everything about these people are saying, but I don't think it's going to rise that much.
I hate this planet.
Oh yeah,
I think we've either reached or passed our peak um, as
Oh
far
yeah,
as
we did
social
about
media.
what
Media.
15 years ago when we were late
Well,
20s.
no, I'm referring to social media in general. Um, I think in the next while, maybe the next 10 years, I'm gonna throw out there. You're gonna find a huge um, trend in dumping social media, and people are gonna distance themselves from it because none of it can be trustworthy. You can't believe anything that you hear
mhm.
on the social media, um,
I don't know.
and that's just
It's an addiction. Once you're on it,
and I
like
think that's is also going to push people towards that too,
it's
because
Well,
different for
people will start
us,
to
right?
recognize.
well,
We came along before all this. We didn't
Oh, that's true.
grow up with this. Like we weren't born into this. Or,
here's
so
a question for you. Do you think what do you think is the most popular social media platform as far as users?
no, I would have
Oh,
no
it's going to
idea.
be. I would bet any money it's the one that they've got over in China. Um,
Probably, yeah.
Nope.
it's not WhatsApp.
WhatsApp is number four.
I was going to say, what's the other one?
There's WeChat.
That was what I was thinking of.
Yeah,
They use that in China like
that's
everywhere.
that's number six.
I think that was the one.
Yeah, like WeChat, and then there's a bunch that are sort of native to Southeast Asia. Like there's Sina Weibo. There's I think it's Kaishu and Douyin. Anyway,
What do they
number
use in
one,
India primarily?
that's WeChat and WhatsApp.
Yeah.
So the number one by far is Facebook still. And there was an article about this about 3 weeks ago. Mind you, this is pre-election, talking about how when the baby boomers are gone, so 10, 20 years, Facebook users are going to drop in half because no nobody under the age of 30 has a Facebook account anymore. They're all on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube. But when that age group, like my grandparents are in their 90s and they're on Facebook every goddamn day. So when those people are
It,
gone, I think that's gonna really be dialed back.
I
Oh,
don't. I
Facebook
don't.
will be. Yeah, but
Yeah.
but social media won't be.
But my thing is, what do you consider social media? And give me some rope here. So social media really started with the ability to go on and post content, comment to users, and have dialogue socially, virtually, right? So do you consider YouTube social media?
To a degree, you can
Sure.
comment. Yeah,
Yeah, to a degree. Yeah.
Would you say it's also a big education platform?
it can be if used correctly,
Yeah.
That
but it's
depends on the
not.
user. Yeah.
So whereas Facebook, you're inundated with ads for other people's content, whereas on YouTube, most of
You
the
are on
ads that
YouTube as well.
but most of the ads that like I block all YouTube ads. So whenever I'm at work and I'm streaming YouTube on my phone on like the general network, that's the only time I ever see ads, and it's always for businesses. It's never for anyone's personal content. Like I don't think I've ever seen an ad on YouTube for like come watch my channel. I'm so and so the influencer.
So
I've
your
never seen
version of
that.
social media is any sites or apps that anybody can advertise on. That's your.
I would say so. Somebody once compared social media to the tabloids of the 21st century, right? So that's where I consider social media, where you can go on and you're not there for news, you're there for opinion pieces.
Mm, yeah,
That
but
that
what makes it social is the interactivity between users, right?
Yes, I would
That
agree with that.
that's
mhm.
that's the only that's where you get the social side of it, which is anything but social from what I see. If you look at anything on there, on any
but
of them for that matter.
but like I would like say Instagram for example. You can go through everything. You could sit on Instagram for 3 hours and you don't have to actually read anything because it's majority of it is pictures, right? Like if you see a picture, you might click on it for more information. But when I'm on Instagram, like say I'm looking at tattoo pictures, I'm not reading any of the content. I don't care what it is. I don't care who did it. I don't care who likes it, that kind of thing. Whereas Facebook, the whole thing was built around likes and comments.
So is Instagram.
But but when you're on Instagram, do you read any of the content?
And I'm not on Instagram, but you can. There are spaces where you can read on Instagram. It
Oh, I know,
depends on how the site is set up. Facebook
but
originally was text and typing,
yes,
right? Instagram
yeah,
wasn't. Instagram is
and
all visual. So it
yeah,
depends
like
on how it's geared.
that's my point, right? It's like when I'm on it, like I'm if I bring up Instagram right now on my phone and I go to like one of my tattoo guys,
Ask any kid in
I
high
don't see
school
any
if they're
text.
on any site to read. I would guarantee none of them will say
But that
yes.
but that's my point. Is Instagram then social media because
Yes, it is social
Yes,
media.
but there's no social interaction. You're not in
You can
unless you
comment,
decide
you can
you can't
like.
you can, but nowhere near as prevalent as
Doesn't
Facebook.
matter. It's still social media.
But is it?
yeah.
But is it the same? Like for example, so Instagram
It
is
is
owned
not
by
the
the same
same,
companies.
no,
Yeah,
but it is social media.
It
I
doesn't
would.
matter whether anyone uses it or not. The ability is there. That therefore it is social media.
But then that ability is also there for reviews on Canadian Tire.
Sure.
Is that
Yeah.
social media?
If I'm writing a review on Canadian Tire and you go and read it, yes, you are reading my social post.
It's an interesting take.
Yeah, because it's public, right? And it's globally public, and that is also the problem
Like
with it
when the
all.
internet first came about, we were all on dial up, and you're in a chat room with
Oh man,
somebody. When you're in a
Hmm.
chat room with somebody typing, that's social. And that is a form of media. Is text not a form of media?
Well, there's that old adage of the media is the message,
No.
right?
Is
And I
text a
don't know.
form of media? Yes.
I would say
So is a
no.
picture. You
I
would
would
say
say
no? Text is
I
not a form of media?
I would
It's
say
the
no.
oldest form of media.
It, I guess that depends on your definition of media, though. Is media content displayed towards a specific individual or group, or is media simply something you put out into the universe?
It's a means of delivering a message, is what it is.
But
And
that,
Media
whether that,
definition: the main
yeah,
means of mass communication, broadcasting, publishing, and the internet.
yeah,
you see, but that definition has changed just by the word internet within the last 30 years. That wasn't the original definition. Like when we were growing up, that definition would not be the same.
well, yeah, but internet is still a form of media, especially now.
Internet's a form of media. If I'm on the internet and I'm browsing a site with no, and it's an opinion piece, is that media? If I'm reading an email from my uncle on the internet, is that media?
No,
Yes, the main
How is it?
means of mass communication. That's the definition of media.
yeah. So the letter from your uncle on the internet is not considered media.
But that's both text and on the internet. So I've met two of Ryan's criteria.
Well,
No,
whatever.
those are just examples of media.
Oh yeah, but that's my point. Is that I'm curious to see if in like with as let's say for example Trump he does his tariff policy and the economy starts tanking. Are people going to be on social media, Instagram, let's say YouTube, let's say Facebook, Twitter?
So here's a better
Are
definition.
okay.
Okay. What classifies as media? The term generally refers to components of mass media communication industry, such as
Mm-hmm,
print media, publishing,
mm-hmm.
news media, photography, cinema, broadcasting, radio and television, digital media, and advertising.
Yeah, see,
So
advertising for me is the biggest. Advertising and mass distribution of information would be. But I'm wondering if if like let's say our podcast, if no one ever listens to it, is it media or is it
it is
simply an audio?
considered media. It is there and accessible, whether
Interesting.
anybody listens to it or not. The cave paintings in any ancient cave would be considered media, whether anybody sees it or not.
That's an interesting definition. I wonder if they ever thought back then that people would actually be looking at their paintings,
I don't know.
hundred
Media
hundred
is
thousand years
is
later.
simply the means of communication. I should say,
Interesting.
media is the various forms of communication.
I'd be
Yeah,
very
but
interested.
we use the term loosely though too. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, back in the day when they used to call multimedia is where it came from. Um, audio, visual, that kind of thing. It was all grouped together into one basic package. Of course, that's all exploded since the advertising is now prevalent no matter where you look on the internet through whatever form you're looking at it with. Um, but back to your scenario of a family member sending you an email directly to you, no one else, doesn't really fall within the realm of social media or media in general, even though the method in which they got it to you is the same channel that is used by other companies to distribute media.
It is media.
See, now I'm fascinated to think because like I don't know if you ever you can go online and you can see pictures of cave paintings, right? Now back to because Ryan's comment has really fascinated me. What it goes back to that question of what were the original meanings of cave paintings? Are they records? Are they warning? Because some people interpret them as warnings, right? Like if you're in a cave and there's a picture of two guys fighting a bear, is that a warning saying, "Hey, there's a bear in this cave"?
It's an early text.
Yeah.
This is what
Shouldn't
happened
it?
to Joe last Tuesday. He got trampled by a buffalo.
It's interesting, like for a history buff like myself, it's interesting to think about, like because there are some massive, like in Spain, there are some massive cave paintings with where it almost looks like somebody wrote out their life story. I've always been fascinated with why that happened and the
I'm
fact that that's
more interested in the collective cave paintings. Like you see, like the tribes have never communicated, but yet the images in the paint in the caves are similar.
Oh yeah, yeah. Have you been watching Ancient Apocalypse?
No.
Oh, it's on Netflix. It's this guy Graham Hancock who he's working this for years, and he theorizes that um, he's been on Joe Rogan a bunch of times. He's a fascinating guy, but he theorizes that before our normal recorded history, like 11,000, 50,000 years ago, there was some other civilization out there that sort of encompassed most of the planet, and then there was some apocalyptic event which then sort of killed all their technology. Because he thinks, like, for example, the Sphinx is much older than it is, and there's some evidence to suggest that maybe it is, that the pyramids are older than they are, and that when the Egyptians found them, they just made alterations, which is why they seem to have done them quite quickly. There's, I can never pronounce it, and I apologize. Gobekli Tepe, I think, or I mean, it's the other way around in Turkey. It's this hill they found, and they started digging into the hill. They found this huge fucking Stonehenge-like temple, but more elaborate, buried in this mountain. And what they deduced was, so archaeologists can tell if it's natural soil or if it's been dumped there. Somebody built this thing and then completely covered it up on purpose, and it's the size of like a football field. But they found cave paintings in the Amazon on these rocks that should not be there. Like there's no record of people living in that part of the world at all, and there's these cave paintings showing, like you say, it's eerily similar to stuff they found in other parts of the world. So it throws into question the whole natives crossing the Bering Strait myth or story, because they've shown now that people were here before that time period even happened. But were they native? That's the big question. But
I don't know. I wouldn't think so. Well,
but
everybody
the
supposedly came from what, Africa, that area? That's where life
well,
supposedly began.
see, I don't believe that specifically, only because they found, like, when you put Neanderthals and Den- Denisovans, I think they're called. There are these two other groups of humanoid creatures, one from Northern Europe, the other from Southeast Asia. They haven't done enough digging in those areas to find out if, maybe that's where it originated first, and then they migrated down to warmer climates in Africa. Maybe the Ice Age pushed them down.
Yeah.
But there's new evidence that shows that people living in like Peru and the western part of South America share DNA with the Polynesians from Easter Island and New Zealand.
Well, it was all one continent at one time, was it not? Was it not called Pangea or something?
Yeah, but that was millions of years ago, right? Like the human migration, we could say that as far as we know, might be, you know, 200 or 300,000 years ago.
Well, we know
So
that's
it's
bullshit because it's only 6,000 years old.
the I had an argument about that this week, yeah, and some people really believe that. Mark, how old do you think the Earth is?
I don't really care how old the Earth is.
As far
Do
as
you
I'm
think it's
concerned,
Honestly,
it's 45.
do you
that's right, exactly.
what do you think is more likely, that the Earth is millions of billions of years old, or it's 6,000 years old?
Well, I mean, 6,000 years old is a ridiculous number because our own history can almost be tracked past that, right? Like,
Yeah.
so that's not even a thing.
But are
But
we counting accurately? I mean, 5 days
no,
ago, we just changed time.
We
yeah,
can go.
exactly, right.
We just
we
We
we just
we
deleted
just
an
lost
hour.
an hour.
Oh yeah, like our concept of years is completely ridiculous because of the way that we change time, and our calendar, the Gregorian calendar. I think it was started in the 1500s, 1400s. So, but we can still go by like lunar cycles, which is what I like to think about. So, like I've stood in places in England and in Scotland that were built sometime in like 5,000 years ago. Like I think Skara Brae is 3,100 BC when it was made. That's like 5,000 years ago. So I've stood in these places. So I mean, unless they just appeared one day, it it's odd.
They were built for, they're just movie sets.
This place was pretty fucking incredible. And if if we could do an extra 2 days on our trip, I would definitely take you guys to Scarborough just so you can see how fucking incredible it is that people built this on the edge of the fucking world and it's still standing.
You're like the ice wall edge of the world? Is that what we're talking about?
Like these people would have whoever lived in Scarborough. Scarborough is on the main island of Orkney, and whoever lived there, if they looked west, like it's right on the edge of a cliff because of erosion and stuff like that. So whoever built that, they built it so high up because the seas would have been a lot lower at that time. So it's probably about 300 meters up. When you would have looked out of the windows in Scarborough and you looked over the horizon, you would have had no clue as to what was out there. It was just a wall of ocean in every direction. But what do you think, Mark? So you think the 6,000 year theory is bogus?
No, I would say that's bogus.
Fair enough. And this comes back around to celebrity endorsements.
Well, actually, I was going to say, with the whole new theories out there that reality is basically created as you perceive it, um, maybe the world is only 45 years old.
Well, it's a
From a
simulation
certain
anyway,
perspective,
so.
right?
Well,
Well, from our perspective, yes.
I
Well,
remember being
Adam and mine. Yours is a little older.
yeah.
That's it. We got to start convincing the population that the Earth is actually only 45 years old.
Well,
Because I've only been able to observe it for that amount of time.
I remember being very 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 young, probably I don't know 5 or 6 because I was still living out the one house that we moved out at 7, and I remember my uncle was there, who's a physicist, and he was visiting. And I remember clearly me asking how my cousins were, who they were just very, very young at the time. And he said he didn't know, and that he would have to check, but that isn't it interesting how I have no clue how their lives are going, and they have no clue how my lives are going, and we exist at the same point in history. And that has stuck with me all these years of just how, and going back to your thing about is the Earth 45 years old? It's yeah, like your brain is the center of your universe. So by your own personal standards, the Earth really is. Well, I mean, I guess for me it's 44, but it's that old. I find that fascinating.
Isn't that kind of weird when you think about it? To you, from your perspective, it's
Yeah,
everything is only that old, because it's really hard to imagine. And let's face it, you have no other choice but to imagine what the world or what life would be like before you were conscious of your own existence.
yeah.
So in a roundabout way, you know, that's that's the way it is for everybody. It's just it's different for everybody, and
Well,
some
it would,
people came before other people, and their experience was different then as well. So
and would it? Obviously, you could never. Maybe in China you could do this, but put a newborn baby on a deserted island where they would be safe, and let them live their existence, and then have them, you know, only introduce them to other societies when they're say 85 years old. And I would love to know what they came up with, right? Because it's like the where what I hate about Christians is and Muslims is the whole missionary thing where they'll go and they'll try and convince whole tribes to change. These tribes that have lived on some of these deserted islands that were what we consider deserted islands, they have an entirely separate culture and belief system that's unique to them. So if you put somebody in modern day with zero technology, sort of like let's say like the Truman Show, and you monitor them, I would really be curious to find out what they would think, like what they think the sun is, what they think the moon is, where they think the water comes from, storms, that kind of shit. I think that'd be fascinating because that would be their very unique perception of the world's history.
well, in that scenario, at some point you would have to interact with the individual in order to find those answers. And it
Or
would be at that point, unless it was all recorded, like your Truman Show reference. But at that point, then you have just influenced everything that they've come to know as fact.
But could you
The
do it?
moment you interact,
But oh, for sure. But for, let's say you don't interact with them for 85 years, and you sort of like in the village, you keep air traffic completely away from the island, so they never see that, and so they only experience the natural world. And I would compare it to, like, let's say a cat. You bring a kitten home from its mother immediately, or let's say the cat's born, the mother dies, it's the only kitten, and then you take it. It will develop, you know, I won't use the phrase human ability, like human interactions, but it'll still maintain its hunter instinct if you let it out in the wild. It still maintains its ability to climb trees. It still maintains its ability to sneak around. How does it learn that? Humans aren't like that.
Not anymore. We aren't.
yeah,
We used to be.
that's exactly not
Oh,
anymore.
yeah, and that's my thing about if we do it to a person on a remote island, in whatever climate, are they going to develop similar to other isolated tribes in similar climates, or are they going to have their completely own way of doing things?
Or better yet,
Hmm.
what would be interesting as well is if that individual that you put in that scenario came from a highly technological society and family.
Yeah.
Let's say modern Western world.
Or
And
even China or Japan, right? Yeah.
yeah, I'm only saying Western because that's where we are, but
Hmm.
um, and you take that individual and isolate them completely with basically nothing but, say, food, so they don't die from starvation. Um,
Experiments
and
over.
like, would they progress? And would they progress at a more rapid pace than, say, our own evolution through time?
Mhm.
Um, that may be a test to see if there's actually a form of instinct within a human being because you've isolated that individual. Um, like how quickly would it um, learn the concept of fire, for example?
I was just going to say, because they theorize that it took humans hundreds of thousands of years to recognize what fire was,
They,
figure out how to replicate it. So no,
unless they saw it, they wouldn't. Right?
yeah,
You can't know what you're not shown.
Which would indicate that you would have an individual with zero instinct.
exactly, yeah,
You
except
know,
feral.
a set feral, which would be eat, sleep, and drink water,
And
shelter,
yeah, in which
that
case
kind
they
of
would
thing.
survive almost solely on instinct.
But
And
would
but that's
would
very basic, right?
but
Yes.
would that
Yeah.
say it's on an island? Would that person have the wherewithal, let's say, very quickly, to not drink salt water?
Once they taste it once and get sick, probably. You'd have
Maybe.
to experience it firsthand,
Well,
right?
in all reality, if you were to put in anyone creature or anyone human being into that sort of scenario, odds are extremely high that they would never survive unless you had
Yeah.
mechanisms in place to make sure that they survive.
Mhm.
Um, it's so I mean it's all hypothetical and very
Oh yeah,
way out
it's
there, but um,
They would learn
I
by
would almost
watching
hazard to
animals.
say that you would have a human being that would be more animal than what we consider to be human being,
Yeah,
yeah.
they would learn by watching and mimicking the animals around them.
assuming there was any.
Very much like Tarzan.
Yeah, like you'd end, but Tarzan would not have worked in, say, Norway, right? Like, let's say, for example, Tarzan was there, and Tarzan had adequate. Let's hypothetical, he has adequate methods to keep himself warm. Like, let's say he has some big overcoat type thing, so he doesn't freeze. He would never have, like, would he mimic a wolf, a
Yes.
bear?
Yes.
But which one would? Because usually you don't mimic multiple species, right? So which one do you think would be? Let's say
Probably a wolf.
interesting. But isn't that a pack? That's a pack animal, though,
Yes.
right? I mean, whereas a bear is more solitary. Like, and for him, like, unless the wolves accepted him,
That's you might end up with that scenario where they don't eat them and they just end up. I mean, there's even today there's cases of, well, I'll say cats, for instance. You can get a cat to raise a litter of rabbits,
Yep, yeah, I've heard of that.
right? Like they'll take an animal that isn't theirs, that they would never take, and just raise it for no reason.
But that depends on a few conditions.
Oh,
For
it's yes,
one,
quite a few, yeah.
right, that said cat would have to be well fed, so it's not needing a food source because that's what the rabbits would be otherwise.
But if
Um,
there's cases of this in a domestic or say a city or an urban environment, there's got to be cases in the wild where an animal has
uh,
adopted the young of another,
Oh, they have, and it's
right?
it's documented. Like there was the famous one about the goats that accepted. There was like a pygmy cow, or I forget what it was, but it was something like a very small other farm animal. The mother dies. It was the only cow they had. The calf comes in and it just joins the goat herd. And it thinks whether it, who knows, does it think it's a goat? I have no idea. But they could, because they eat the same food, right? Then they basically go about their days the same way. This cow just blended in with these goats. It's quite fascinating. But what, like, and back to the cat thing. If you like, I remember we had a kitten, Misty, gray cat. It was a barn cat where the mother had died, and the kitten was tiny, 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 tiny. I don't even think the kitten was had its eyes open. But within a year of being around a dog, it was still doing cat shit. Like it would still go and stalk prey. It would bring the prey, like the dead bird thing, back to the door. Like where do they learn that? That's got to be instinctual on a whole different
Yeah,
level than what we
it would be
experience.
passed on genetically.
Just quite fascinating. Like the ability of a humpback whale or any whale birth to go straight to the surface within seconds of coming out. That's
well,
fascinating.
I mean, you're talking about basics. So in the case of a human being, the question would be, would would a human being from essentially birth, isolated on its own with no other human beings, and let's just hypothetically say that there's a means to be fed, clothed, or otherwise protected from the elements, would that human being even learn to walk, for example?
I would think it would learn to walk similar to how humans originally became vertical, which was it would reach for something, it would have to get a little taller to reach for it, and it would learn that it could stand on its own two legs. I think that's probably how it would happen. And whether it happened in the first 10 years is a different question. Like as the trees around it grew taller, and it sort of like that's how they think giraffes evolved, right? And everything just got taller. And my thing would be, how would it know what to eat? How would it know what was safe? How would it know like what a storm is? How would it know to keep warm? How would it know to keep dry?
Trial and error.
I guess, yeah.
Well, the problem with trial and error is that sometimes error will get you killed in a
Yes.
scenario like that. Like it's in easily at that.
Well,
Now,
that's how humans have become the dominant species. Trial and
Well,
error.
sure, from yes, but it's not the individual that errs and
No.
eats that berry that ends up being poisonous and then they die
So
from it. It's
what would
it's everyone
happen?
else that went, oh, don't eat those berries.
So yeah, what would happen 10 times out of 10 is you would end up with a dead child.
fascinating.
That's what would
Really, if
happen
you think about it,
ten
the only
times out of 10.
reason the only reason that human beings have actually progressed to the point that we have is because we're social.
Oh yeah,
Oh
and
yeah, we very much
Like
are. Yeah.
tribal, social, it's the same thing.
Yes.
It's learning from each other, right?
well, what's fascinating to me is like I'm big in the ancestry stuff, as you know. The fact that you're sitting in your desk or your chair talking to us tonight is because a long string of your ancestors made the correct choices. That's it. Like that it literally is it. Like whether one guy said, "Hey, let's all jump off this cliff and have fun." Five of them died. Your ancestors survived. That kind of thing. Or let's all
Oh,
you know.
yeah.
That's the only reason you're here.
The odds of any one of us as an individual of actually being alive is ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
Like I don't know if it's something you can even calculate. I'm sure somebody has tried.
Well,
What the odds are.
they you can look up. how many people died. Like, so Ryan's some of Ryan's background is French, from France. The other part is from the British Isles and Germany. The amount of people in that area who died of the Black Plague and then the subsequent plagues and plagues that aren't even recorded was monstrous. Like, it wiped out a third of Europe's population. That's a fuck ton of people. So his ancestors in a variety of different places were able to all survive and then meet up at some point to form him, right? So, like, that's fucking fascinating. Like Ryan's grandpa going across to World War II, he was on one of the ships that didn't sink or didn't get torpedoed. Whereas, how many people now are not alive because their people in the 1940s were drowned on a troop ship? It's fascinating.
Random.
Totally, yeah. But is it random or is it choice? Because
It's both. Like it's. I don't believe in fate.
yeah, I don't believe in luck or fate either. Yeah,
It's just random and happenstance.
talk about weird.